Jay. Welcome to Mvskoke Radio, your weekly source for tribal and community news, interesting guests and discussions, plus a local events calendar. That's Jay Stongo, Gary Fife, Jaho Jifkidos, Mvskoke Radio, Mabo Hedgerwedski. Welcome to our program here on the Brew on this beautiful morning here. We are enjoying this, and we'll look forward to the next couple of days before it starts getting silly. We have a couple of things we'll be sharing with you today. First of all, we'll be speaking with the representative from the Smithsonian Institution's National Museum of the American Indian. They're getting ready to dedicate the American Indian Veterans Memorial, and we'll be speaking with Rebecca Troutman to find out more about that particular observance. And in the second portion of our program, we'll be speaking with Kellen Bible of our own Veterans Administration here with the Mvskoke Creek Nation. We'll find out how we're doing there and how the situation is facing our Mvskoke veterans. But first of all, Ms. Troutman, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Okay, we want to thank you so much for making time. I know it's kind of probably a hectic time there in D.C. and a lot of crazy things going on and people going in weird directions. And American Indians have always been part of that community, so no doubt they are mixed up in it also. Mm-hmm. But first of all, let's get a quick idea of who you are and how you work there at the National Museum of the American Indian.
Oh, sure. Thank you so much for having me, Gary. I really appreciate this opportunity. So my name is Rebecca Troutman. I've been with the National Museum of the American Indian since 2003, the year before the museum opened on the National Mall, and I am the project curator for the National Native American Veterans Memorial.
Now, that's the memorial itself has quite a history and story behind it. The final selection that is being dedicated was the result of a competition, shall we say, that the museum put out nationally to Native American artists. So how did that particular choice come about?
Sure. So that's right. We were authorized. The museum was authorized by Congress to create this memorial, and as part of that process, the first thing that we did was to hold a series of consultations across the country because we felt it was really important for us to get some guidance from the people whom the memorial will honor. And so we spent about 18 months traveling across the country, meeting with veterans, tribal leaders, family and community members, including we held 4 consultations in Oklahoma in 2016. And so out of those consultations, we really got a better sense of what Native veterans and their families and communities wanted to see in this memorial. So then the legislation directed us to hold an open design competition, which we did starting in 2017. It was an international competition. We received 120 proposals, and out of those proposals, the design that was selected by our jury was one by Harvey Pratt. And Harvey Pratt is a member of the Cheyenne and Arapaho tribes of Oklahoma. He's a Southern Cheyenne Peace Chief, and in addition to being an artist, he's also a Marine Corps Vietnam veteran. So we feel like he really brought a lot of his own experience and his own understanding of this long tradition of service to his design for the memorial.
What a challenge that must have been. But when you go back to the beginning of it and think about the task ahead of you, there are over 500 Native American tribes and communities, rancherias and reservations around the nation, and each has its own particular culture and have undoubtedly sent many of their young people to serve in the armed forces. So with that broad blanket, shall we say, that quilt, a patchwork quilt of Native communities and cultures, what were the the principles you're after? What did you want to see in a design? Something that would serve all of those people.
Sure, and you're right. That was really one of the biggest challenges of this project, was finding a design that would be meaningful to people from so many different traditions, so many different backgrounds. And the memorial also honors Alaska Native and Native Hawaiian veterans. So that was, quite a tall order. And so holding these consultations really gave us a better sense of what we needed to try to accomplish. Some of the things that we heard in those consultations were, first, that it was very important that the memorial be inclusive, honoring all Native American veterans, American Indian, Alaska Native, Native Hawaiian, men and women from all eras and all branches of service. We also heard that it was important for the memorial to recognize and honor the sacrifices and the support given by the families of those who have served. And we heard that it was important for the memorial to reflect Native spirituality, again in a very inclusive way, and that it was important for the memorial to be a place of gathering and of healing. So whether for veterans who served decades ago, for family members thinking about their loved ones who have served, or for young service members who are just returning home from their service, it was very important that this be a place of healing.
Now, how did you go about avoiding the stereotypes? When most Americans think of Native people, or Indians, as we're called, they immediately draw pictures of Sioux warriors on horseback chasing buffalo, or wearing war bonnets and that sort of thing. What steps, perhaps, did you take, or what did you have in mind in trying to avoid that sort of thing?
Well, that's right, and I think we in our design competition we did receive a great range of really incredible designs. But one of the key things that our jury looked for was a design that wouldn't fit any of those stereotypes, or wouldn't be very specific to one community or another, or one vision of what a Native veteran can be or another, but was instead very inclusive. And so, I think Harvey Pratt actually participated in some of our consultations about the memorial, and heard some of this discussion, and also just through his own experience and his own, discussions with other veterans, I think he really had a sense of how this needed to recognize so many different traditions of service and avoid those stereotypes.
Now, there have been more Native Americans than any other ethnic group here in the nation, percentage-wise, who have served. And not only just being in the service, they tended to choose the occupational specialties that perhaps might have put them more into danger. Scouts, Rangers, SEALs, Marines, of course. And did that valor and bravery kind of fit into the thinking that you were trying to portray?
Yeah, I think so. And, we definitely heard a lot of discussion about some of these different kinds of experiences that Native veterans had in our consultations. And so it was really important for this memorial both to be, as I said, a gathering place, a place for healing and ceremony, but also a place that truly draws public attention to this long history of honorable and courageous service and sacrifice, and that truly shines a light on this service, and is going to, part of our goal and our assignment really with this memorial is to raise public awareness, so that I think so much of the public just isn't aware of the great sacrifices that Native people have made for their country.
Right. Native warriors have fought in every war this country has had, including the one that started it and the one that almost divided it. And that participation has always been something our people have been proud of. And I want to, I guess, get into that just a bit. The current, the memorial that was chosen and constructed, and how this will differ from, say, the Vietnam Memorial, where they have three figures up there, black, white, and unknown, so to speak, who's supposed to represent all the other natives. I always think of the category other when you fill out a form. So how is this one going to be different, and can you give us an idea of what it's going to look like?
Sure, yeah. So I think that's one thing that really sets this memorial apart, that rather than being specific to one conflict, and rather than being specific to one conflict, this memorial is really focused on all Native veterans. So as you say, from the Revolutionary War forward to the present and going into the future. So it's really meant to be a very timeless memorial and a very inclusive memorial and welcoming memorial. So I can tell you a little bit about what the memorial will look like. It's going to be set into the living landscape to the east of the museum, on the museum's grounds, and so it's surrounded by trees in our kind of woodland landscape and overlooking the wetlands landscape. One of the things we heard in the consultations was that it was important that this be kind of a peaceful and reflective experience to visit the memorial, a contemplative experience. So rather than being right on, say, Independence Avenue, where it would be seen by everyone who passed, but also next to a lot of traffic and noise, it's kind of set away from that within the trees and overlooking the water. And so the memorial is kind of a circular gathering space with seating surrounding the centerpiece, which is really a large vertical stainless steel circle, 12 feet in diameter, and it sets on top of a low carved stone drum form. There's water that flows continuously outward from the base of the circle, and then there's a place also at the base of the circle where a flame can be lit for special or ceremonial occasions. So it's really meant to be a place that kind of calls people in to gather, a place where Native people can hold ceremonies to remember their loved ones who have served. There are also 4 vertical lances or spears, and those are places where people can leave prayer cloths in memory of those who have served.
That's pretty amazing, and the idea was not to put up another statue of a man with a gun or something like that, right?
That's right. You know, another thing that we heard in our consultations was that it was important that this memorial not represent war or commemorate war, but that it honor those who have served. So it's about the veterans, not about the wars.
The idea of, first of all, the museum being there, and of course this memorial taking up another spot on the mall, it has not actually been a real popular kind of thing among some people who said, there are too many memorials and we don't need this, and why, Native Americans, everybody else will want one too. Did you run into that kind of thing, that kind of sort of opposition?
We haven't run into that so much, but I certainly am aware of it. We haven't encountered pushback about this memorial, but I am aware that there have been some of those concerns, and so we're really grateful that Congress saw fit to authorize this memorial, because it's just so important that the public be better aware of this service and acknowledge and appreciate and honor this service.
It's just amazing there. By the way, if somebody wanted to get an idea of what it looked like, can they go online and find that?
Yes, they can. So there are some images on our website, which is americanindian.si for Smithsonian Institution.edu, and there will be more. So we're in the very last few days of completing the finishing touches on the memorial, and we'll be marking its completion next week.
Well, that's probably a goal that you've been looking forward to for some time then.
It is. We've really been looking forward to it. And, we had hoped to be able to have a huge gathering of Native veterans and families and communities next week on Veterans Day. Of course, that's not possible right now, but what we're doing in the meantime, until it is safe for us to gather again, is that on Veterans Day on our website, there will be a virtual program that we hope all your listeners will watch, and this program will be an honoring and thanking of Native veterans for their service, and marking and celebrating the completion of the memorial.
Now, I know there are a number of Native groups around the nation, honor guards and flag ceremony people, including a women's group. Are those folks going to be making a showing there? Obviously, the virus has got to be a problem here, but natives who've been in uniform, will they be there to take part?
So, for next week, we are not encouraging people to gather at the memorial for safety reasons, but we are looking forward to doing that when it's safe again, hopefully next year. We're planning to have a big in-person dedication of the memorial, including a procession of Native veterans on the mall. And so we are then, of course, inviting as many communities to bring their veterans here as possible. We would love to have many Native color guards here. In our consultations that we held across the country, many of those consultations were opened with color guards from the communities, and it was such a moving way to open those consultations. And so we're looking forward to welcoming those groups here when we're able to dedicate the memorial in person.
Did you run across this women's group up there? I believe it's perhaps in Minnesota or somewhere.
So there is a Native American women warriors.
Right.
Yes, and they've been part of some of our programming around leading up to the opening of the memorial. And actually, Micheline Bigman, who's the founder of that group, is on our advisory committee for the memorial. So they've been great partners for us, yes.
So this memorial is not gender specific either, then?
That's right. That was another thing that we heard in our consultations, was that it was very important that, and this kind of goes back to what you mentioned about the stereotype of a Native warrior or a Native veteran, that it's very important that recognition be given to the many Native American women who have also served and sacrificed.
Right. Laurie Piestewa comes to mind, and
yes,
down in the Southwest. Was it Arizona, I believe? Yeah.
Yes.
I hope the community there in D.C. is very urban and sophisticated for the most part. Have they received this idea, this dedication to their hearts also? I mean, it represents ethnic people that aren't necessarily there in great numbers, but has D.C. accepted it?
I think so. There's been a lot of excitement about the memorial, a lot of attention to it, and once it's open, right now it's and for the past year it's been behind fencing, so people really haven't been able to get a good look at it except peeking through the fencing. But I do anticipate that there's going to be a lot of excitement and a lot of interest from the community.
You mentioned fencing there. Presume that's for protective measures, and that unfortunately has become more of an issue as many monuments have been torn down or vandalized and things like that. I'm thinking of Confederacy and people getting all up in arms both ways on that particular issue. Does that figure into your thinking there? Is there some fear that something weird like that might happen?
So, I should clarify that the fencing that's been up is just the typical fencing that goes up around a construction site, so just strictly for, kind of keeping people out of a construction site while it's not safe for them to be in there. So that will be coming down, but certainly, we do... We have made that a priority, the recognition that there are many events that take place down on the mall in Washington, D.C., and we'll always need to keep a close eye on making sure that nobody disrespects the memorial but we don't anticipate that being an issue. I think in part because this is kind of a different kind of memorial, and it's really just honoring and thanking these veterans for their service. Right.
Now, the reason I raised that particular topic was that we have seen this thing happen in other places. I'm thinking of the Red Lake Reservation was spray painted with Nazi graffiti and stuff like that.
Oh.
So we're hoping that the community, the national community, will understand what this is all about and want to recognize it and honor it also. Now, what kind of feedback have you got, perhaps from Native veterans and the community in large?
So during our consultations, we heard a lot from veterans and family members who were, kind of felt like this honoring was overdue and really something that was welcomed and something that people were looking forward to. And in response to the design itself, we also have gotten a lot of really positive feedback. So that's been really gratifying to see.
Yeah, right. The design, it kind of staggers me that one particular vision could be used to represent so many people. I mean, like our own Mvskoke Creek culture here is so radically different from, say, the Apaches or the Senecas or the Alaska Natives in Hawaii. So I guess all of that is figured in and something for everyone, so to speak.
I really hope so. And our jury, so our jury represented communities from across the country, Native and non-Native artists, designers, cultural specialists, and they really felt that the symbolism in Harvey Pratt's design was something that was meaningful in one way or another to all Native communities. In addition to the design elements of the circle that he brings into his design, he has talked about including 4 elements that he felt were important to Native people. So fire, which represents to him strength, courage, endurance, and comfort, and that's in the flame that can be lit at the base of the circle. Water, which signifies purification and prayer. The earth surrounding the memorial that provides people with all they need. And then the wind that will move through the memorial, carrying prayers and memories of visitors skyward. So it's meant to be a very welcoming, interactive memorial, and hopefully does have something meaningful for everybody.
Yeah, it's quite a challenge, so the design has got to be quite an impressive feat there. As we kind of sit back and think, we're still making veterans, unfortunately, and we're losing them. Does the memorial make some reference at all to those who had served and not come home?
So not specifically, but in kind of an abstract way, I think that it does, because there are benches around the memorial, and so that's meant to be a place for people, again, either for veterans to come and remember their own service, or for family members, loved ones to come and remember those people who they've loved to have served. So it's meant to be a place for both, for healing and remembrance, whether for veterans themselves or for their families and communities, or for the general public who wants to recognize that service. And it is also meant to be a very timeless memorial, so something that won't feel dated in a few years, because, as you say, we do continue to have conflicts, we do continue to have people serving, and this is meant to honor all of those veterans going forward.
Yeah, I remember an Ojibwe man, Jim Northrup, who put it pretty succinctly when he says, we've got to stop making veterans.
Yeah.
Now, kind of perhaps an odd question here. You're going to have to perhaps deal with some emotional reactions from people who come to sit and meditate and observe. Is there any idea or a plan to kind of comfort those folks who might be suffering emotionally there?
I can't say that we have a specific plan for emotional support, but we do once things open up a bit more as far as safety, we do plan to have people there to kind of talk to visitors about the memorial. We'll have information inside the museum about Native service. We certainly intend to continue having exhibitions, programs, conversations about service, both the parts of service that people are very proud of and the parts that are painful for people. So in our consultations, we heard that there's a need to have these conversations about post-traumatic stress, for example, and about the need for access to services for veterans. And so we intend to help facilitate those conversations.
It would be nice if you had perhaps some volunteer counselors or something available. Mm-hmm. Yeah. As the time grows nearer, I'm sure there are some folks who are interested in either participating one way or the other, perhaps in person, or might want to visit the museum. How do they go about that? Is the museum itself still open? Can people come and attend the ceremony?
So the museum is open. The Smithsonian has been working to very gradually and safely reopen its museums. It's open for limited numbers of people, and not all of our exhibitions or spaces are open right now. But it is open. There's more information on our website at americanindian.si.edu. And so again, we won't be having in-person events surrounding the opening of the memorial next week, but we will have this online virtual program. Also, the day after that, on November 12th, there will be a conversation on our website with the author of a new book that the museum has just published titled Why We Serve. And it's a beautiful book that traces the history of Native American service in the armed forces. We're also opening next week an online exhibition by that same name based on the book that, again, traces this history of service. So there are a lot of ways for people to connect with the memorial and with the museum. I guess finally also the fall issue of our museum magazine, American Indian Magazine, is a special commemorative issue devoted to the memorial. And that's available online at americanindianmagazine.org.
You know, it occurred to me as I was listening there that this is a particularly special day, 11/11, and I presume it's at 11 o'clock. Now, wasn't that the day that the armistice for the First World War was signed and that war ended?
I believe that's right, and I should note that this virtual program is actually going to be something that people will be able to access at any time on Veterans Day. So they don't need to tune in at a particular time. If they come to our website on Veterans Day, they'll be able to find the program and go ahead and watch it then. And so we're really hoping that great numbers of people will do that.
Okay, well, I tell you what, Ms. Troutman, we'll wrap this up and get out of your way. I know you're going to be busy, but if you had a final word to share with our listeners about this memorial and the dedication, what might it be?
I think it's just really a sense of excitement that we finally reached this point. We've been working on this project for the past several years now, and I know it's been a much longer time coming for the people who have served. And so, we're so excited to be at this point, to be able to mark the completion of the memorial, and really to draw more attention to this long history of service, and to give it the appreciation that's due.
Okay, now final time, the logistics regarding this observance, time, date, location.
Yes, so next Wednesday, November 11th, Veterans Day, any time of day, people can go to the museum's website at americanindian.si.edu and watch this virtual program marking the opening of the memorial, and there's information there about the other related programs.
Okay, Rebecca Troutman, thank you so much for making time to talk with us and give this information to our listeners. I'm sure there will be many veterans out there who will be interested.
Thank you so much for having me, Gary. I really appreciate it.
Okay, you have a good one.
You too. Thank you.
We're going to take a short pause here, and then we'll be coming back with our second segment to talk to Mr. Kellen Bible about the Mvskoke veterans and programs there and how they are doing in today's crazy world. So please stay with us here on Mvskoke Radio on The Brew.
I started doing it when I was 11. I wanted to be just like my big brother. And some of my friends were already doing it. We got hooked fast. I just can't get enough. I'm Jacob, and I'm addicted to playing the drums.
There's lots of stuff that makes it cool to be Native. Doing meth isn't one of them. Find something better to do. Check out ncai.org. A message from the Partnership for a Drug-Free America and the National Congress of American Indians.
Hear that? That's the sound of Hope being killed by meth. Methamphetamine use is causing huge problems in our community. Hear that? That's the sound of something you can do about it. Events like rodeo, res ball, and family time can help keep kids away from meth.
talk to your kids. Keep our culture alive. A message from the Partnership for a Drug-Free America and the National Congress of American Indians.
Learn more at ncai.org.
Welcome back to Mvskoke Radio here on The Brew. I'm Gary Fife, Jawajifkados. Joining us here in the studio is Kellen Bible, who is director, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Of the Veterans Administration Services Program here with the Mvskoke Creek Nation. Thank you, sir. We appreciate you coming in to talk about us. Now, we've got Veterans Day coming up next week, but we thought we would just kind of jump ahead of it and announce anything that was going on and talk about how Mvskoke veterans are doing. So, first of all, let's take a quick a capsule of the program and the services that are offered there.
Okay, sure. Thanks for having me, first of all. So in addition to just the general assistance of helping veterans with their applications for benefits and various claims, we are expanding to provide some supplemental services. And so and some extra programs that will bring some more discussion, some more awareness to veterans' needs, as well as the needs of the families. So one of the things we've been doing recently is doing presentations to the veterans for the flags. So depending on the branch of service, we will either allow them to come pick up flags from the office, or we'll make deliveries to them or mail them out. Just kind of depends on everyone's personal situation. Yesterday I dropped off 5 flags in Holdenville, so sometimes we have to make home visits just because of the COVID environment. Kind of limits everyone's interaction. So
now, when you say flags, are we talking about the Stars and Stripes or a particular services emblem?
Either one. It really kind of depends on our inventory as well. So I know that there's some churches who are doing some Veterans Day programs coming up. So a few of them have requested American flags or tribal flags or the branch service flags. So we just it depends on everyone's needs, and we try to accommodate as we can. Right now we have a waiting list because we've had an overwhelming amount of requests. But that's more specific to the Army. Everyone else, I think, is kind of okay right now. But we do have an order with the vendor right now that's being processed. So we'll be able to catch up with everyone and make those requests fulfilled. So that's something that's kind of ongoing. It's been very positive. We're getting a lot of responses on that. So it's been a great outcome, really. And so I think the veterans and the family members appreciate that effort.
Let me ask you this. You mentioned large numbers of people who had served in the Army. Do we have numbers of Mvskoke citizens who have served in particular branches of the service? Is the Army the biggest?
The Army is the biggest, and I think the Marine Corps is the second. But we don't really have a lot of data on that. It's a lot of paper copies right now. So we're working to create more of a digital database so we can extract data and really understand the situation a little bit better. After talking with Citizenship, they told us that they have 605 veterans registered through their program. And so, but that's only specific to Citizenship. That doesn't mean that they used the Creek Nation Veterans Affairs Service Office for a claim. That's the only way that we know about them, is if we have their paperwork. So there's some veterans who never file a claim, but they might be registered with Citizenship or the tag agency or somewhere else. Or maybe they use the American Legion or the DAV to file a claim, and we never know about them. So it's very hard to track where everyone is and what their needs are. So that's something that we're working on too, is a strategy on how to collect information and better understand the full picture, because right now it's very limited. So that's why we're also trying to implement a lot of technology right now.
Let me run back in my memory here for a few years. There was I don't know what you would call it, not having been in the military myself. I wouldn't know the terminology, but it was sort of a pass and review parade. And beforehand, they marched for the chief.
Right.
Obviously, there were a large number of Army veterans and then lesser amount for the Navy. There seemed to be a good representation for the Marines and then lesser for the Air Force. And I believe there was one gentleman there from the Coast Guard. So would that break down, so to speak, kind of be a measurement for...
Yeah, I think that's pretty representative of the entire population, but it's still hard to track because, well, even if they show up, that doesn't mean that we have a record on them or we have any information. So they could just show up just to participate, and they don't need anything from us, and that's okay. So that's what makes the data collection very difficult. So that's why, as Grover Wind he's been working on this sign project for a while, and so he has even his own list of veterans that's not necessarily related to our office. So we're trying to examine all of the list of what everyone has and compile everything into a comprehensive list so that we know that no one is forgotten about. We want to make sure that everyone is acknowledged and everyone is informed about what we can provide to them. So it's an ongoing effort to collect that information.
Now, we had mentioned the date, 11/11, with the previous interview. That's the date the armistice was in effect for the First World War, I believe. And are there any records of any World War I veterans among Mvskoke people?
We do have a little bit of information on it, but the older it is, the more difficult it is to track.
Sure.
So I think that's where we have a lot more representation for like the Vietnam veterans specifically, but not a lot for World War II, and not even for a lot for the Middle East. That's even very limited, which is kind of strange because I think the younger generations would be more responsive to providing some information, but that's even been kind of, I think, at a lower rate than I expected. So it's again like one of the other efforts to capture as much information as we can, because I think it's important to not only acknowledge the efforts, but also it's important to preserve that history at the same time.
Well, the reason I ask that is because I think I saw the film Sergeant York a couple of weeks back, and it just sort of stuck in my mind. And I was thinking, there got to be some Indian guys in there too. Anyway, that's a little off the subject, but keep our listeners paying attention. Now, the numbers that you have now, over 600, I believe?
That's just based on citizenships numbers. Our numbers are much lower, and so that's the hard part. Now that we have digital access to the claims software with the VA, we can start to track everybody digitally now. They haven't been, the Cree Nation hasn't had ownership of their records necessarily. So it's all been through the state of Oklahoma. So that's what we're doing now, is we're taking ownership of our veterans, and we're doing it in a way that we can manage their case files digitally and expedite claims, as opposed to mailing in hard copies or having someone else do it in another method. So,
right, yeah. Well, this digital world is still kind of new to me. I grew up in a world that had no computers, no nothing. I even remember our first television, come to think of it. But now that information is almost at your fingertips. And so it makes it a lot easier then for you to collect accurate information on our people who have served.
Absolutely. So we can we can log into the system and search by the agency and know exactly who's in the system under our care, and that's going to help everyone get answers fast. So we can submit a claim the very same day. We can do we can look into the statuses of their claims. So we're waiting on one more system on the federal side to allow us to look into every document. So that's going to give us basically unprecedented access for the nation, where we can look into what letters are even mailed out and on what day. I mean, it's going to be very responsive and accurate, as opposed to waiting on someone else to do it on our behalf. So it's going to be a game changer.
The process of doing all this, do you by any chance keep a feel or a database on male versus female?
We don't. Not necessarily. We do know that the population of the females that we have on record is very small.
Right.
And I've had discussions with females asking about the representation of females in the tribe as veterans. I believe in that, but we just don't have any records. So, because I know there was also some interest in having a female honor guard, but I don't know that we have the population to support that either. So that's kind of the challenge. Is we don't know who's out there.
Women warriors.
Yeah, and so what we're doing is we're waiting on it's all kind of referral based at this point, because if we don't have records on them, we don't know who's out there.
Right. Now, the reason I mentioned women warriors because there is a group up there of women who have served in 4 different branches of the service, and when they present the colors and things, they are wearing, I believe, jingle dresses with their insignia on their backs, and make quite an impression. So women are there, and I remember I attended a job fair once, just looking for a story, and I spoke with this young woman who had her son with her, and I said, what are you looking for? And she said, well, something that might get me a job that's related to what I did in the service. I said, oh, really? Well, what branch? She said, well, I was in the Army. I said, what did you do? She said, truck maintenance. Changing tires and brakes on these big trucks in the sandstorm.
Yeah.
So I think, well, women have broken all those stereotypes, including combat. So now, have you run into women who are carrying a lot of these kind of skills?
Yeah, and so one specifically is Sarah Baker. She was in the Marine Corps, and she was part of the Native American Women Warriors organization. So that's kind of how I kind of get some more information about that and learn more about their perspective as well. So she's been a great resource, always helpful, and so just I'm leaning on certain individuals for referrals because they have a better understanding of who's out there or who they served with.
Right.
Whereas if we don't have records, we don't know. So that's the challenge for us.
Well, for this lady, she had skills that I didn't. I don't know the first thing about changing a truck tire, particularly in the sandstorm. Now, we have this significant day coming up next week. How is your office prepared for it?
So what we're doing is we're taking a different approach just because of restrictions due to COVID. So what we're doing is a couple of smaller efforts as opposed to a large gathering and a big celebration. So hopefully next year we'll be able to do that. But for this year, we're going to be releasing a video. It's basically a montage of service members. So there's that, and that's been largely an effort and a partnership from the language program at Employment and Training. Mm-hmm. So,
I was aware of one that was put together a couple of years back, and I even submitted my father's photograph from the Marine Corps in World War II, and it was a pretty impressive piece as you see the faces of all of these different people who have served, including women. Now, kind of an aside question, and does that emotional, I don't know, I don't want to say appeal, but factor ever get to you, so to speak? I mean, do you look at this and think, who are these people, or where are they, or how they served, or what they sacrificed, and
Somewhat. I mean, well, for me, as a Marine Corps veteran, I think that response comes more from November 10th. So the Marine Corps' birthday. So it's a day earlier. When the commandant's message is released, that's different than just like a Veterans Day. So it just has a different flavor, you know.
Yeah,
and so,
I can imagine.
Yeah, it's more personal to me. But yeah, I mean, just to see maybe like raw footage of Normandy, or you know, all the past wars. Maybe it's Vietnam. Those are just very powerful images, you know, that it's important to remember. So we got to keep that legacy going.
Unfortunately, I guess it's somewhat easy for those who weren't there to forget it. I had spoken with some people from the Southwest, and somehow they got around to World War II, and I said, yeah, then you guys have got Ira Hayes. And they said, who? I said, well, you know, the flag raising on Iwo Jima, well, the guy in the back is an Indian guy. He's a Pima, and that's Ira Hayes.
Yeah.
Oh, is that okay? Well, so do you have to remind people then sometimes of the sacrifices made by our people?
Yeah, I think for the most part, it's good to remind them. You know, it's especially for World War II. It was the Native Americans made up the largest group of minority volunteers. It wasn't always like a draft situation. Like Native people have always volunteered. So it's I don't think a lot of people know that. So it's I think it's important that they can recognize that.
You know, I know there are a couple of videos out and about focusing on that subject, including one on the Navajo code talkers. And they weren't the only code talking group, by the way.
Right.
I understand there were Choctaws and some Creeks.
Even
and
Seminole and Choctaw.
Comanches, too.
Yeah.
Yeah. I imagine some Japanese guy eavesdropping on a Comanche discussion there, tanks and bomber. Now, I pulled you away from your schedule there, so what else have you got lined up there?
So in addition to the video release for Veterans Day, we also have 8 other video interviews, and that was part of the one of the newspaper articles recently. So we're still trying to gather more participants for that, but we have 8 that are ready to go. We're also going to be launching our website. The goal is by next week. We're getting pretty close, but technology is just a struggle, and so and it's going to continue to develop. It's not going to just be one and done. So some of the other more challenging things are eventually we're going to create a virtual tour of the building, so you can actually from your home on your laptop walk around the museum and look at people's displays. So that also is important in this COVID environment where we don't have a lot of foot traffic. So, but you can still experience the entire thing. I think that's going to be very valuable for everyone to have access to.
Well, I remember walking through that area, and of course I had contributed some of my father's memorabilia from the Marines in World War II. And looking around at these other wars, you see these little personal items.
Yeah.
Or perhaps, a weapon of war, maybe a bayonet or something like that. And you think that's tangible, that you can almost reach out and touch these things.
Yeah.
And do you encourage people to come in and take a look?
Absolutely. But also we want to provide that option for everyone to not come in. It's kind of
ridiculous.
Yeah. So we're trying to do what we can to make everything accessible. Right now it just might have to be online. But otherwise, yes, we definitely want people to explore and learn and just read and ask questions because you don't get to see these things anywhere else. It's a part of our history that we need to embrace and learn about. Yeah. Other things we have going on are, so here I brought you some I brought you some prototypes of the coins that we're having made. So these are custom Mvskoke Creek Nation Veterans Affairs coins that are going to be produced, and they'll be available to veterans and their families, other community partners,